At an undisclosed military base in Georgia, the atmosphere was typically calm, with soldiers going about their daily routines. The base's mess hall, a hub for troops to eat and socialize, was no different. Today, however, would be anything but ordinary. Word quickly spread through the barracks. President Donald Trump was coming to visit. The news spread like wildfire across the base. Some soldiers were excited to see the commander-in-chief, while others were skeptical. "What's he doing here?" one young private asked, adjusting his uniform. Some soldiers wondered if this was another political stunt, or if the president would truly engage with the troops. The kitchen staff rushed to prepare an extraordinary meal, working tirelessly to ensure everything was perfect. The mess hall was buzzing with anticipation, and everyone was eager to know what Trump would do. Would he simply make a brief speech and leave? Or would he spend time with the soldiers and learn about their lives? Among the troops was First Sergeant Ellie Thompson, a 26-year-old veteran who was focused on the task at hand. She'd seen politicians come and go during her service, but she didn't expect much from this visit. It was just another day, she thought, until everything changed. As the president entered the mess hall, a hush fell over the room. But what happened next shocked everyone. Instead of heading to a reserved VIP table or standing behind a podium to deliver a speech, President Trump grabbed a tray and stood in line like any other soldier. His security team made subtle motions, suggesting a VIP table, but Trump ignored it. "Good evening, everyone," Trump greeted the kitchen staff with a casual wave, selecting his meal as if he were just another soldier. Ellie couldn't believe her eyes. This was completely unexpected. The President of the United States, in the middle of a military mess hall, interacting with soldiers like one of them. He walked toward Ellie's table, where she sat with her mentor, Master Sergeant Bill Rogers, a 58-year-old veteran with decades of service under his belt. Trump stopped by their table and asked, "Mind if I join you?" Before Ellie could respond, Master Sergeant Rogers, ever the calm and composed veteran, gave a chuckle. "It's your country, Mr. President," he said, offering a welcoming gesture. Trump set his tray down without any formalities. "So, what's on the menu?" he asked casually. Bill grinned. "The usual, Mr. President. Sloppy joes and mashed potatoes." Trump took a bite and nodded. "Not bad," he said, his demeanor completely relaxed. It was clear that this was not your typical political visit. As they ate, Trump looked around the room, noticing the diversity of the soldiers sitting at the tables. After a few moments, he asked, "What's the hardest part of serving?" Bill spoke first. "Missing family," he said. A few other soldiers around the table nodding in agreement. "Long deployments, birthdays missed, anniversaries. It takes a toll." Ellie, however, had a different answer. "The hardest part," she began, "is when you leave the service. You feel like you've given everything, but once you take off the uniform, the world seems to forget about you." There was a brief silence. Trump set down his fork and looked at her. "What do you mean?" he asked. Ellie sighed. "My father served 20 years. When he retired, he couldn't find a job anywhere. It was as if the country had moved on and forgotten about him." Trump's expression softened, and for the first time, Ellie saw a genuine concern in his eyes. "That's not right," he murmured. "We need to do something about that." The room went quiet, as everyone at the table took in his words. Trump turned to an aide standing nearby and whispered something to him. The aide nodded and quickly left the room. Looking back at Ellie, Trump said, "Tell your dad to expect a call soon." Ellie raised an eyebrow. "A call from who?" Trump smiled knowingly. "Let's just say from someone who can help." The next day, Ellie's father, Robert Thompson, received an unexpected phone call. "Mr. Thompson, I'm calling from a major defense contracting company. We saw your service record, and we'd like to offer you a position overseeing logistics for military bases." The president personally recommended you." Stunned, Robert could hardly believe what he was hearing. He had spent months searching for a job, only to face endless rejections. Now, out of nowhere, he had an offer. Ellie couldn't hold back her excitement. She immediately called her father. "Dad, what happened?" "I got a job, Ellie." Her father's voice cracked. "A real job." For the first time in a long while, Ellie felt a sense of hope. Hope that the president's promise to care for veterans was more than just words. Across the country, more and more veterans began receiving unexpected job offers. The president had quietly launched a program to connect former soldiers with employers who valued their experience and skills. In a small corner of Georgia, Ellie realized that the visit to the mess hall had sparked a change, one that would impact veterans long after the president had left. As Ellie reflected on the events of that day, she couldn't help but smile. It all started with a simple meal shared in the mess hall, and now, for the first time in years, veterans were finally being heard and helped. Weeks passed since President Trump's visit to the military base in Georgia, but the impact of that simple meal in the mess hall was still unfolding. Soldiers across the base couldn't stop talking about it. Ellie Thompson, still processing the whirlwind of events, watched as more and more veterans received unexpected job offers. The shift wasn't just happening in her father's life. It was happening all over the country. One evening, Ellie sat in her bunk, scrolling through her phone. Headlines popped up. "Veterans find new opportunities thanks to White House initiative." "Military to civilian transition program fast-tracked after president's visit." Ellie shook her head in disbelief. She hadn't expected anything to come from their conversation that night. Yet, here it was. Real action. Real change. Her father had gone from being jobless to managing logistics for military bases. And now hundreds of other veterans were experiencing the same. Her thoughts were interrupted by a knock on the door. It was Master Sergeant Bill Rogers. "You got a minute, Thompson?" he asked, stepping inside. Ellie stood at attention out of habit. "Yes, sir," he chuckled. "Relax, Ellie. I'm not here to give you orders. I just got a call from the higher-ups. The White House is inviting you to a private roundtable meeting in Washington. They want to hear more from you about what veterans are facing." Ellie blinked. "Wait. What? You made an impression, kid. The president remembers your words. And now, he wants to do something bigger." A week later, Ellie found herself in Washington, D.C., walking into a high-security conference room inside the Pentagon. Seated at the long, polished table were top military officials, CEOs of defense contractors, and key members of the White House staff. And at the head of the table, President Trump himself. Ellie sat stiffly as the meeting began. Policy discussions, numbers, logistics. It was overwhelming. But then Trump turned to her. "Ellie, tell them what you told me at the mess hall." She took a deep breath, then spoke with the same honesty as before. "Sir, it's simple. Soldiers dedicate their lives to this country. But when they take off the uniform, too many of them are left behind. We need to change that." The room fell silent. Then Trump nodded. "That's exactly why we're here." Over the next hour, they discussed new veteran hiring initiatives, better transition programs, and strategies to ensure no soldier was forgotten after service. Ellie couldn't believe she was at the table, influencing decisions that could help thousands. As the meeting wrapped up, Trump pulled Ellie aside. "Keep pushing. Don't let them forget what really matters." She nodded. "Yes, sir." Back at the base, Ellie threw herself into action. Inspired by what she had seen, she worked with leadership to start the Next Mission Project, a program helping active duty soldiers prepare for civilian life. Resume workshops, interview training, and direct connections to veteran-friendly employers. It was a small start, but it was something. Master Sergeant Rogers watched proudly. "You're turning into a leader, Thompson." Ellie smirked. "I had good mentors." Over time, the movement spread beyond their base. More soldiers got the support they needed. More veterans found careers worthy of their service. And it all started with one unexpected dinner in a military mess hall. If you're hearing this story, maybe you're a veteran trying to figure out what's next. Maybe you're a soldier still in uniform, wondering what life will look like after service. Or maybe you're just someone who believes, like Ellie, that no hero should be left behind. This isn't just another military story. It's a reminder of something bigger, something we often overlook in the rush of everyday life. Service doesn't end when the uniform comes off. The sacrifices don't stop when the last mission is complete. And for too many veterans, the hardest battle isn't fought on distant shores. It's fought right here at home. It's the battle of finding purpose again. The battle of being seen, valued, and given the opportunities they deserve. Ellie's father spent months searching for work, feeling like his decades of service had been erased the moment he retired. And he wasn't alone. Across the country, thousands of veterans wake up each morning with the same question: what now? These are men and women who once led teams, repaired aircraft, navigated war zones, operated complex systems, who risked their lives without hesitation. Yet, when they return home, they find doors closed. They sit in job interviews and hear, "You don't have enough experience." They go from being leaders to feeling invisible, from serving their country to wondering if their country still remembers them. Think about that. How many times have we thanked a veteran for their service? How many times have we heard speeches about honoring our troops? But here's the truth. Words aren't enough. Gratitude isn't enough. Action is what matters. And that's exactly what Donald J. Trump understood that night in the mess hall. When Trump sat down with Ellie and Sergeant Rogers, it wasn't just a photo op. It wasn't about politics or cameras. It was real. He listened. He asked questions. He didn't just want to know about the food in the mess hall. He wanted to understand their struggles, their fears, their dreams. Ellie will never forget the way he leaned forward, elbows on the table, genuinely engaged, as Rogers spoke about soldiers struggling after service. Or the way his expression hardened when Ellie told him about her father, about how a man who had dedicated his life to the military was now struggling to put food on the table. "That's unacceptable," Trump had said, shaking his head, and he meant it. That moment wasn't just talk, because after that night, things started happening. The next morning, Ellie's father received a phone call that changed his life. A job offer. One he had been waiting for, hoping for, but never expected. And he wasn't the only one. Over the next few weeks, veterans across the country started getting calls, offers, opportunities that had been out of reach for years. Trump hadn't just listened, he had acted. He had made phone calls, pulled strings, cut through red tape, and made sure these men and women got the respect they deserved. But it didn't stop there. Weeks later, Ellie was invited to a closed-door meeting at the base. She wasn't sure why, but when she walked in and saw Trump standing there, surrounded by military leaders, business executives, and defense officials, she understood. He had turned that one conversation in the mess hall into a mission. Trump gestured toward her. "Ellie, tell them what you told me that night." Her throat went dry. She wasn't used to speaking in front of powerful people. But then she thought about her father, about all the veterans who had been left behind. She took a deep breath and spoke. "Veterans don't need pity. They don't need handouts. They need opportunity. They need someone to recognize that the same skills they had in the military, Leadership, discipline, resilience are just as valuable in civilian life. Trump nodded. Exactly. He turned to the business leaders in the room. So, what are you going to do about it? That meeting led to something bigger than anyone expected. A national initiative, the Next Mission Project, was launched, connecting veterans to jobs, training programs, and business opportunities. Military bases across the country began implementing new transition programs. Companies pledged to hire more veterans, recognizing their true value. And it all started with one dinner in a mess hall. So now, here's the question for you. What will you do? Because this isn't just about Trump or Ellie or one military base. It's about every soldier who comes home and wonders if they'll be forgotten. It's about every veteran who gave everything for this country and now just wants a chance to build a future. Trump saw the problem and took action. Now, it's our turn. Because the heroes who defended us shouldn't have to fight for a future. It's our responsibility to stand up for them. And if one dinner in a mess hall can spark a movement, just imagine what we can do together.